Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whatever may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Let's edify one another, shall we? Welcome again to another lesson of our gospel, or our study to show ourselves approved edition or courses. This one is beginning at the beginning, Genesis lesson 14. And as we continue our study, we have seen the creation of the world, followed by the first sin, the disobedience of man, and the first punishment. Then we saw the destruction of, or not the destruction, rather, but we saw the first murder, and we saw the destruction of the world through a worldwide flood because of the wickedness of man. And we ended last time with Genesis chapter. We got through Genesis chapter 9, and we saw that in as we concluded Genesis chapter 9, we saw that Noah became a husbandman, and what he did in his time on the earth, in his vineyard, with his vineyard, was he began to make wine, and he became drunk, and in his drunken state he became naked, or was uncovered, as the King James says, and was discovered by Ham. And God, and when Ham mentioned it to his brothers Japheth and Shem, laid a garment on their shoulders, walked backward into the tent, and covered their father. Then when their father knew what had happened, he cursed Canaan, the son of Shem, which we didn't really cover that so much, but it leads one to consider the possibility that it wasn't Ham himself that uncovered his father's nakedness or saw his father naked, rather that Canaan, his grandson, saw it and told his father, and his father told his brothers. And thus, when Noah cursed Canaan, it was because Canaan had spread abroad the shame of Noah. Just something to ponder. But regarding that, remember that Noah cursed Canaan, the son of Ham, not Ham himself. So we pick up with Genesis chapter 10 now, and what we're going to do is we're going to see in Genesis 10 a kind of genealogy of the earth. Now, these are the generations, the history, the descendants of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It's pretty simple, right? Unto them were sons born after the flood, and the sons of sons of Japheth: Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tiras. Sons of Gomer: Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan: Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families and their nations. And the sons of Ham: Cush, Mithraim, and Phut, and Canaan. This is the Canaan that Noah cursed. And the sons of Cush were Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Ramah, and Sabtaka, and this Havilah is the name of the country, which, if you remember in Genesis chapter 2, was the country that was encompassed by one of the one of the there it is, verse 11, one of the rivers that came forth from the river of Eden. So the river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became 4 rivers. The river, the name of the first is Pison, which is what encompasses the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. So we see then that Havilah was a country, and Havilah was also the son of was one of the sons of Ham, or great grandsons of Ham. And it's important to recognize that, because what Moses does as he records the book of Genesis is he uses landmarks that would have been known to people. So when he says it becomes 4 rivers, he uses the rivers that were then known. Euphrates is one of those, and we still have the Euphrates today. Now, where the Pison and the Gihon are, we're not sure, but we know where the Hiddekel and the Euphrates are, because the Hiddekel is the Tigris and the Euphrates is the Euphrates. So then we have the sons of Cush with Seba and Havilah, Sabta and Raamah, and Sabteka, and the sons of Raamah were Sheba and Dedan. Sheba we might be familiar with, because again we have the country of Sheba, of which the queen came to visit Solomon. And Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. We have the legend, or the story of Nimrod, preserved for us in the archaeological history or record of the world. And he was one of the Ninevites. It's recorded within the annals of, or the record of the Ninevites. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. And of course, we know who Babel was. Babel eventually became known as the Babylonian kingdom. So he had Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So this was all within a land, and he had a large kingdom. Out of that land went forth Asher and builded Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calah and Resen, between Nineveh and Calah, the same as a great city. So we begin seeing countries developing from this point on, and from the descendants of Noah. Asher, which became Assyria. We have, of course, the Assyrian capital was Nineveh, and Nineveh became a prominent city throughout all of Israel's history. Babel became Babylon, and that was a prominent city in Israel's history. Now, Mitzrayim begot Ludim and Anamim and Lehabim and Naphtuhim and Pathrusim and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim and Caphtorim. Now, the Casluhim, which is the Philistines. The Philistines, we know, was one of the countries of Canaan. So what we have is basically the settling of what is today known as the Fertile Crescent and the area that is surrounding that. That means the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and essentially over into sections of Africa and somewhat into like Persia and India and Pakistan, that area. Canaan begat Sidon his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Arkite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. So we see that Canaan became the father of most of the Canaanites. The Philistines, of course, came from Got to go back up. It came from Ham, but from Cush rather than from Canaan, if I remember correct. Let's see here. Cush, Mitzrayim, Phut, and Canaan. We have... Nope, it's from Mitzrayim. Came from Mitzrayim. But it was a different father, different one of the sons of Canaan, of Ham, than most of the rest of them. Japheth, it is said, I believe he was the one that was up into the, I'll think of it, Europe. Was it okay? And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. And these are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries and in their nations. Unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem were Elam and Asher and Arphaxad and Lud and Aram. And the children of Aram were Utz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begot Salah, and Salah begot Eber, and unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his day was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begot Almodad, and Sheleph, and Hatzarmaveth, and Jerah, and Hadaram, and Utzel, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abimael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. So here again we have two names, Sheba and Havilah, and we have Ophir, another one of the countries that was mentioned in Genesis chapter 2. So here again we have the possibilities of these ones being from whence the once familiar country is coming. So whether it was from Japheth or from Shem, I'm not familiar, but I do know that these were the countries. The countries of Havilah and Ophir were from came about from the sons of Noah. That's not a far stretch to say. Their dwelling was from Mesha, as thou goest unto Sephar, a mount of the east. And these are the sons of Shem after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Now, I want to pause here, because in Genesis 32, we see that the nations were divided in the earth after the flood. And what we see is in verse 31, they were divided by their families, and they're divided by their tongues. This is really important to put together because of one verse here, verse 25. Keep this in mind, because one of the sons of Eber, Peleg, was named Peleg because it was in his lifetime on earth that the earth was divided. Now, when the flood came upon the earth, we had a division, as it were, of the dry land separating because of the forces of this of these fountains of the deep being rushing up. and separating continents. If you were to look, that's the wrong one. That's the map of the United States. If you were to look at a map of the Earth, you could look and see where there are apparent there's apparent edges where they look like they should be joined together. For example, South America and Africa look like they should be joined together, etc. But that's not what they're talking about here. Peleg was named Peleg because in his day was the earth divided, and the earth was divided according to their families, verse 31, and according to their tongues. Now, remember, everybody came from Noah, so everybody spoke the same language. So what does it mean by their tongues? And well, Genesis chapter 11 is going to tell us exactly what that means. But these two verses, verse 25 and 31 and 32, gives us the precursor to Genesis chapter 11, which starts out as we continue. I'm going to pause there, and CJ is going to give you time to ask any questions that you might have over this particular Genesis chapter 10.
Sam says I tried to figure out where to figure that the point and wonder which country where they are in relation to us. You can look on an ancient map there to figure out some of these places. Any thoughts in Genesis chapter 10 before we move on? Thoughts, comments, questions? Any thoughts or comments? All right, let's keep going.
Like my mug. I've got hot chocolate today. Okay, so continuing on, Genesis chapter 11. What we see here is the whole earth was of one language, one speech, one tongue. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. Remember, we talked about in just this last chapter with Nimrod, his country, his kingdom was in the land of Shinar. And his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh. All of this was in the land of Shinar. So they found this plain here in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, come, or go to, come now, as another version says. Let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. They had brick for stone and slime, and they had more for mortar. And they said, let's build us a city. Okay. Let's build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. Now, there's nothing wrong with making a city and houses for you to dwell in. There's nothing wrong with even making a tower, except for the fact that this particular statement and sentiment does something else, something that is concerning. Do any of you know what it is? CJ, you can pause the video just so that they can have time to answer this question.
So what is concerning with chapter 11, verse 4? Any thoughts on that? Why would this be concerning? Alright, then let's listen to find out.
Does anybody know what it is about this verse that is the problem? In Genesis chapter 9, God told Noah, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. You see, God told them to go forth and be fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly, verse 7, in the earth and multiply in it. So in chapter 11 and verse 4, they are not seeking to fill the earth any longer. They are seeking to remain in all one place so that they don't be scattered all over the earth. Therefore, they are in direct violation of what God has commanded them to do. So the Lord comes down to see where the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And God says, this is not right. They are united. That's good. They all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. In other words, they're going to, if this is what they're going to do, then they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. And so they're going to do whatever they desire to do. And it's not going to be what they're supposed to do. Verse 6. So come, he says to himself, let's go down there and confuse their language that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scatters them abroad there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city because they couldn't understand one another. Imagine the confusion on their face when one day they woke up and they were unable to understand their parents or their brother, whom they had always understood, and suddenly he was speaking gibberish to them. That would certainly be confusing, would it not? So the Lord scatters them abroad. That means he divided them according to their tongues. That was the purpose of confusing their language so that they couldn't understand one another's speech, so that they would be divided, they would be scattered. And so Genesis 10, verse 25 and 31 through 32 is a direct cross-reference to Genesis 11, verse 8. Basically verses 7 and 8. Therefore they called the name Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So what we have then is the reason why the earth was divided in the days of Peleg. So, and we have when it happened in the days of Peleg. We have why it happened, because they violated God's direct command. And we have how it happened. God confused the languages. And we have where it happened, in Babel, on the plain in Shinar. This is the genealogy then, continuing on. This is the genealogy Oh, by the way, I'll pause just a moment and let CJ answer any other questions or comments that you might have over this particular section as I take my final drink of my hot or not so hot chocolate.
All right. So they didn't want to do what God said. Right. God said to fill the earth in Genesis 9, and that actually echoes Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 11. That they want to stay together. And Marine says yes. Any questions or comments over chapter 11, 1 through 9? All right, we'll just keep going.
Let's look at more. Okay, so this is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old when he begot Arphaxad, 2 years after the flood. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years, begot sons and daughters. Arphaxad lived 35 years, and he begot Salah. After he begot Salah, Arphaxad lived 403 years, and we got sons and daughters. Salah lived 30 years and begot Eber. After he begot Eber, Salah lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. Eber lived 34 years, begot Peleg. If we were to, and a lot of people have tried to determine the age of the earth by the genealogies listed, and it's just really not possible to do that. Shem was 100 years old and he turned 100 years old 2 years after the flood. So he was 98 when the flood happened. So he begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Arphaxad lived 35 years. Yeah, I'm not going to do the not going to do it. That'd be 37. Salah happened 37 years after the flood. There's 67 years after the flood was Eber. Eber was 100 and, or Peleg was 101. Something like that. Anyway, years after the flood. After begot Peleg, Eber lived 430 years, begot sons and daughters. Peleg lived 30 years, begot Reu. Reu lived, Peleg lived 209 years and begot sons and daughters. What we see is a steady decline of the age of people after the flood. Reu lived 32 years, begot Serug. After he begot Serug, Reu lived 207, begot sons and daughters. Serug lived 30 years, begot Nahor, then lived another 200 years, begot sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years, begot Terah. After begot Terah, Nahor lived 119 and begot sons and daughters. Now Terah lived 70 years, begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And this is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begot Lot. Haran died before his father, Terah, in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. Then Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran. the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren, she had no child, and Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So what we have then, obviously, is the onset or the coming on the scene of Abram. We have Haran dying in Ur of the Chaldeans. And the Chaldeans were in the land that is commonly known as Iran/Iraq, right around the Euphrates. Later on, of course, that would become the Babylonian Empire, a part of it. And they were very well to. I mean, they weren't too bad off. Ur was according to the archaeological record, Ur was a fairly decently sized city, fairly well to do for quite a while. But Terah, Abram, Lot, they all left and went to Haran. In Padan-aram and dwelt there. Terah lived 205 years and died in Haran. Of course, he was 70 years old already when Abram was born. Now, Genesis 12. Any questions or comments so far?
We pause for station identification.
Any questions or comments over chapter 11? And good to see you, Suba. A good question. Moses wrote the book of Genesis. Moses.
Not at the moment. All right, Genesis 12. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. So now we go into the specifics. Even though Terah was the one that up and moved, he was head of the father's house, or head of the house. What we see, though, is that God had spoke to Abram. Get out of your country, from your father and family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So here's what we know. Here's what we commonly call the land, the nation, and the blessing. First, he says, I will make you a great nation. And then he says, all the families in you shall be blessed. Go to a land that I will show you. There's the land. I'll make of you a nation. There's a nation. You shall be a blessing. Land, nation, and blessing, because in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Land, nation, blessing. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Lot was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. I guess I misspoke. He left Haran, not Ur. So Terah took them from Ur, and Abram left from Haran. I think later on it does say that he left from Ur, but so be it. Right now we're going to say he goes from Haran. So Abram departs from the Lord as the Lord had spoken to him. Hebrews 11 tells us a little bit about this particular move when it says that by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. So Abram goes out in obedience through faith. And Lot goes with him. He was 75 years old. And he leaves. He took Sarai. He takes Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they depart to go to the land of Canaan. So they come to the land of Canaan. And as he passes through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, the Lord appears to Abram and says to him, to your descendants, I will give this land. And there he built the altar to the Lord who appeared to him. So God says, go to this land, which I'm going to show you. And then once he gets there, God says, I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to give it to your descendants. He doesn't say, I'm going to give it to you, but he says, I'm going to give it to your descendants. And Abraham, he's a very humble man because he's very content with that. As soon as God says, I'm going to give your descendants this land, Abraham, out of thanksgiving, out of worship and worship to God, builds an altar. He doesn't need the land. He doesn't, it's enough that God is caring for his descendants. How many times do we have to, do we look at things as if we need it right this instant? Yet Abraham was like, well, I've got enough. I'm going to keep moving. It's enough for me that you're going to take care of my descendants. Many times we have the idea of Hezekiah, who, when he was confronted by Isaiah, asking, well, who are these people? And he said, well, these are the Babylonians who came to congratulate me on getting better. And Isaiah says, well, what did you show them? Everything. Well, and Isaiah says, well, you shouldn't have, because now the Babylonians are going to take everything. And, well, but it's not going to happen in your lifetime because of all the good you did. And Hezekiah says, well, that's good enough for me. Abram was looking toward his children, and thankful that God was going to look out after them. Hezekiah was only concerned about himself. And he moved, so Abram moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. We know Ai from the book of Joshua rather. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So it seems almost anywhere that Abram stops, he builds an altar to the Lord and he calls on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. So he wasn't supposed to be situated. It was supposed to be settled. He kept moving on, even after he called upon the name of the Lord there. Now, we come to the first of many famines that are listed within the Bible. The first of two that are in Abram's life. There was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to dwell there, for the famine was severe in the land. And it came to pass when he was close to entering Egypt that he said to Sarai his wife, "Indeed, I know that you are a beautiful woman, a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore, it will happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say, 'This is his wife,' and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you." Now, we may get the impression that, Abram was rather biased in his opinion of his wife. I mean, Abram's 70-some years old. He's 75 at least, if not a little bit older than that. And yet he thinks that, and yet Sarai is, I believe she's like 8 years younger than he is. Maybe it's 9 years, 8 or 9 years younger than he is. And she is so fair that he is scared that people are going to kill him so that they can take her. Now, we might say that Abram is only looking out for self-preservation, which would blow my previous statement about how he was concerned about his descendants more than himself. However, when you stop and consider the fact that Abram was, as the husband and as the head of his household, sought to care for this woman whom he loved very dearly, perhaps our perception might change a little bit. He very truly believed and viewed Sarai as a beautiful woman. And he sought to be there, to live with her, to care for her, and to continue loving her or caring for, supplying for. In fact, we have this command for wives that they are to treat their husbands in the same way that Sarah treated Abraham, because of the picture of love that there is contained within the account in Genesis. It's supposed to be a gentle and a quiet spirit. It's supposed to be incorruptible beauty. That is a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. That's the way holy women who trusted in God adorned themselves, even in being submissive to their husbands, even as Sarah also obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are if you do good and are not afraid with any terror. And so as we look at that, as we consider, running through there, Abraham loved Sarah very much, and Sarah loved Abraham very much, very deeply. And it's a very beautiful picture of the true relationship a husband and a wife should have. He cared for her and desired to be there, to live and to love and to care for Sarai. And so he sought her help, not that it justified her lie or her half-truth, as we'll see in a moment. So it was when Abram came into Egypt that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. See, it wasn't just Abram who thought she was beautiful. He was not wholly biased. He was justified in his belief that she was very beautiful because the Egyptians saw her as very beautiful. And they recommended her to Pharaoh, saying, "Hey, you should see this stunning beauty that just came into our kingdom." And so Pharaoh had her brought before him, brought into his house, and he treats Abram very well for her sake. So he gave Abram sheep and oxen, male donkeys, females, male and female servants, female donkeys and camels. But because Sarai is Abram's wife, the Lord plagues Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai. So Pharaoh finally gets down and realizes, this didn't happen until we brought Sarai in here. We need to figure this out. Get Abram, get the man that she came with in here. And he says, what did you do? What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she's your sister? I might have taken her as my wife. Now, therefore, here is your wife. Take her and go your way. And Pharaoh sends him away from him. At one other point in his life, Abram explains that Sarai actually is his half sister. And so, therefore, it's not wholly a lie that she is his sister. It's just a half truth. But God is watching out over Abram and Sarai, even in the sin that they committed. They are still faithful. He is still faithful to Abram and to Sarai. Any other any comments or questions so far?
All right, so you whoops, sorry. I need to get the video file back up. I'll get to some of the comments afterwards. And we were about here. God doesn't need our help, that's right. So yeah, Genesis 19:1-5 is the proof that Moses wrote Genesis. The Lord said so. Well, it is an ancient city predating Moses. The reference to early Chaldeans is a post-Mosaic, since the Chaldeans were an Aramaic-speaking tribe that lived in the first millennium BC, long after the death of Moses. Well, remember, Moses is speaking about inspiration. And if the Bible says that he went to Ur the Chaldeans, that's exactly where he went. In Genesis 14:14, the narrative reports that Abram chased the four ancient Near Eastern kings who kidnapped Lot as far as Dan. This is a reference to the city of Dan is a post-Mosaic because the city earlier is called Laish, was not named Dan until the time of Judges. Well, it also makes sense if you consider inspiration. God would know that it would be called Dan later. And apparently it was called Dan by God earlier too. So there's proof. No, you didn't provide proof. You provided unfounded assertions. The proof is not Matthew 19:1-5. Yeah, no. Nope. The Look of Ages been wrong different in that time. Yeah, that's right. Age was kinda different there. And I thought maybe he didn't know lied. No, he knew he had some sort of law. Definitely. Because there was uh Abraham knew he had done wrong, so I don't think that's right, Sam. God doesn't need our help. That's right.
Sarah treated Abraham.
Whoa.
The true relationship a husband and a wife should have. The
Sorry.
Lord plagues Pharaoh. He, his wife, all that he has, Lot with him. He is still faithful to Abram and to Sarai.
All right.
Any other any comments or
Here's
questions
where we
so
are.
far? Okay, let's see if I can do something CJ probably hasn't done. Cover 4 chapters in one sitting. All right, so I've got a few more minutes left. Let's go ahead and hit Genesis chapter 13 if we have the time. Then Abram went up from Egypt. He leaves Egypt. The famine's over. He, his wife, all that he has, Lot with him. They go to the south. And Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver and gold. And as he goes on his journey from the south, they go back up to Bethel, to the place where his tent had been between Bethel and Ai. And they go to that place where the altar is he had made, and when he first got there, and he called again on the name of the Lord. Lot also going with him. He was very rich. He had flocks and herds and tents, and the land is so because of their wealth, the land's not able to support them. I see this being in the breadbasket of the United States, as it were. Iowa and Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma were kind of the breadbasket of the United States, indeed, if not the world. But what I see a lot here in Iowa is a lot of farmers, if they're poor farmers, as in the quality of their practices is poor, they overgraze their land, and so their pastures are always very short, and their cattle don't do well because, well, they don't have a lot of food. Awful lean cattle, but there's not a whole lot of meat on them, and the meat that's good is on them is not very good because it's going to be very sinewy. And so what we have here is the same condition. The land's not able to support these two very rich men. And so it gets to the point of arguments between Lot's servants and Abram's servants because of the fact that they're arguing over land, trying to say, okay, I need this for my cattle. No, I need this for my cattle. And so they're fighting over the land. The Canaanites and the Perizzites are there, and they're going to be fighting over the land, trying to find food for their animals. So Abram comes to Lot and says, come on, let's not there be the strife between you and me, between our herdsmen, because we're brethren. So we've got the whole land before us. Tell you what, let's go apart. You go one way, I'll go the other, and you choose. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go north, I'll go south. If you go left, I'll go right. You choose. Whichever way you go, I'll go the opposite. And I'll let you have the first pick. So Lot lifts up his eyes. He sees all the plain of Jordan, that it's well watered everywhere. and it was like the garden of the Lord. It's like the Garden of Eden. It's like the land of Egypt as you go toward Zoar. In other words, the land of Goshen, where the Israelites were later to settle because it was so rich and perfect for livestock, carrying of sheep and stuff. And this was also before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So then Lot chose all that because, hey, this looks really good for my animals. I'm going to go here. Lot journeys to the east, and so Abram goes west. And Abram dwells in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwells in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. And the Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him. So our camera shifts again. We see this little brief interlude or argument between Abram and Lot, and the camera briefly follows Lot as he journeys from Abram's side. It goes left, or as it were, goes east to the cities of the plain as far as Sodom. And the Lord said, then this camera pans back to Abram, and the Lord says to Abram after Lot has left, he says, lift up your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward, all of this land I'm going to give you and your descendants forever. This is yours. I'll make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants could also be numbered. Now arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. And Abram moves his tent and goes and dwells by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. And we find throughout the rest of the life of Abram that the trees at Mamre, the oak trees, the terebinth trees, depending upon which version you're reading, are a favorite place for Abram to dwell. But so in wrapping up, what we have seen then is God has given commandment to man to go multiply, fill the earth, and Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth begin to do just that. However, the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth decide to countermand God's order and decide to go contrary to it, build a city, build a tower so that they wouldn't be scattered. And so God says, this isn't good. This is them disobeying me, and then they're going to just simply make a habit of this. This is not good. And so he confuses their languages. And so in the days of Peleg, all of the earth was divided by tongue and into separate nations. And then we moved on, and we saw how that through the descendants of Shem, we come to focus upon one known as Terah and his son Abram. And so we're looking closer at Abram. We've seen Abram leave his father and family in Padan Aram, and his nephew Lot and their wives leave Haran and go into Canaan, a land which God was going to show them. Now, Abram spends a little bit of time in Canaan, and then a famine hits. He goes down to Egypt, where he commits a sin known as lying about his wife. And even in Egypt, God increases Abram's wealth and watches out over his servant Abram, in that he makes sure that Pharaoh does not take Sarai as his wife. Pharaoh sends Abram back, or sends him away, and he and Lot go back to Canaan, where, because of the greatness of these two men, the land's not able to handle their wealth. And so the two, after an argument between their servants, the two of them very cordially and familiarly agree to separate so that there wouldn't be any arguments between them. And Abram, like I told you before, mentioned before, Abram was a very humble man, and he gives Lot the first choice. This was a man who did not want war, who did not want fightings and arguings. And so he treated people, his family, with respect and with honor. So after Lot chooses the best for himself, Abram goes his way, settles at amongst the trees at Mamre, which is over in Hebron, and builds an altar to the Lord there. And we're going to leave off there in Genesis chapter 13, at the end of Genesis 13, and pick up with Genesis 14 later. Are there any other questions or comments that might need to be made? As always, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Abraham was a peacemaker, and he knew God was with him. Amen. Amazing life of Abraham. Any other questions or comments? You're welcome.
Thank you again for being here, for participating in another study to show yourself approved as we delve through Genesis. I hope and pray that you've been edified through our time, and that your knowledge in the book of Genesis has been increased. And as you walk this day, and as you meditate upon these chapters that we have read, upon this Word of God, won't you study to show yourself approved? I'll see you then. God bless.